Identity V's maps hide a lot more lore and stories than you would think, from Geisha's appearance in Ever Sleeping Town all the way to the strange sign in the graveyard of Red Church. We've already covered so many of these map secrets in my previous edition of this video, but how about the two newest maps? Chinatown and Darkwoods. Well, there is a lot more to unpack here. Chinatown, possibly my favorite map, is full of shops, restaurants, and tons of Chinese text on signs, posters, and much more. Starting from the middle of the map, called World Tree, we find a few references to IDV characters on the walls of the theatre. We can see a poster that seems to be for a film about Gamekeeper, a coffin that would suggest a movie about Embalmer, and a film named Obsession, from what I can tell, that seemingly has a reference to Lawyer with a woman. Who could that be? Those are some obvious things you can find on the map, but let's go to what I call the sculpture shop. Are those waxed people statues, or are they a work of wax artist? I'm starting to question it. At the back of the shop you will find a fireplace that is actually an interactable object for survivors. Click the stove or the corresponding button on PC and the fire will kindle. In the tea shop next door, by going through the big hole in the wall, we find a painting on the wall. Although I did have some trouble translating the message surrounding the picture, it seems to describe the scene of the picture. Flowers bloom, snow falls in spring, or something like that. There are a lot of other places around Chinatown just describing what the place is from what I can tell. Having a name for the shop, for example the Qingyong Tailor Shop, or just a sign that says books. Some I've had trouble translating, so if there are any hidden Chinese messages, please tell me in the comments below. Speaking of the tailor shop, just across the bridge from it, you'll find a bronze statue of a man standing on a dragon. After some searching and a little bit of translation of the messages that surround this shrine, we discover that it probably is a statue of Guan Yu, who was a military general during the late Eastern Han Dynasty of China. This man, after being talked about in stories, folklore, and books, eventually was deified during the Sui Dynasty and is a symbol of loyalty and righteousness in East Asia, even now. This is emphasized more by the message to his right that talks something about righteousness. Another little note about this bridge area, more of an interesting gameplay element, is that you can actually hide beneath the stairs in the little cutouts. I hadn't paid much attention to them, so maybe you can hide there someday? Out of all of the shops on this map, from the tofu shop to the bookshop, the potter shop, one stands out to me the most. Resnick's Clock Shop. Many avid lore fans may recognize this as being Mark Resnick's shop, father of Mechanic. After working on clocks and his own experiments, his competitors had him murdered. That may explain why there are some funeral wreaths by a rocket chair next to that shop. It may also explain the ruins that are in front of the shop, as Mark supposedly died in an explosion. Moving on to Darkwoods. This map has quite a few interesting quirks to it. Let's begin with one of the strange elements it has that can only occur when a hunter meets a certain condition. After cheering a certain number of survivors around the campfire, small Dreamwitch followers will appear in front of each chair. Dreamwitch will then appear towering above the flames of the bonfire, dancing around. Pretty cool in my opinion. Near the bonfire we find a dog, supposedly mutated by the toxic river nearby and captured by Gamekeeper. How do I know this? Well, by heading into the lumber house, or as I now understand we should call it Gamekeeper's shack, we see Gamekeeper's various cloaks hanging up on the walls, along with an assortment of Gamekeeper-esque weapons and tools that he probably uses for his hunting or his protecting of the grounds of the manor. This is Gamekeeper's home. You can even see his bed. This is further emphasized by the multitude of traps that are set around the map that look like Gamekeeper's bear traps and reveal whoever walks on them to the opposite team. Fun fact for you, if you play Gamekeeper on this map, the traps become Gamekeeper traps and will instead capture survivors without Gamekeeper needing to place them. On the treehouse, we find a strange hole in the wall with a sign asking us not to look. And yet another interesting place on the map is Little Girl's Swing. Considering we know that this is Gamekeeper's forest, this swing seems a little out of place in my opinion, unless Little Girl and Gamekeeper are somehow connected lore-wise, or possibly the tree houses are especially relevant to something. So many little places and lore tidbits can be found on these maps. Did I miss any? Please tell me if I did. I have already covered the other Identity V maps, so if you want to check that one out, then you should click here and learn about some more IDV map facts.